The last thing I expected on that bright sunny afternoon was for my life to take a nosedive into oblivion. There I was, standing alone at a highway rest stop, my eyes tracing the path of the receding RV that carried my husband Nathan and his parents Marcia and Elliot. The dust from the gravel crunched under its tires, a grim soundtrack to Nathan's parting words, still echoing in my ears. "You're nothing to us. Find your own way home." For a moment, disbelief shackled me to the spot, a bizarre sense of unreality clouding my senses. How had a simple family trip spiraled into this nightmare? My mind raced to piece together the events that led to this moment, searching for any sign, any warning I might have missed. But nothing made sense. The laughter, the shared meals, the quiet nights under the stars, how could they culminate in abandonment? Fumbling for my phone with shaky hands, I dialed Marcia, clinging to a frail hope that this was some twisted misunderstanding. The call connected, and I was met with Marcia's chillingly calm voice. "Kira, darling, I think you've overstayed your welcome. It's for the best, really. Nathan needs someone more suitable." Her words, sharp and cold, sliced through any illusion of warmth we'd shared. The finality in her tone shattered my hope, leaving me to grapple with a harsh truth. This was no mistake. They intended to leave me here, miles from home, without a second thought. The weight of my solitude pressed down on me as I ended the call, the reality of my situation settling in. There I was, abandoned, with nothing but the clothes on my back and a wallet that seemed mockingly light for the journey ahead. The rest stop, once a mere pit stop on our journey, loomed over me like a crossroads to an uncertain future. With a deep breath, I forced my feet to move, my mind still reeling from the shock. Each step felt heavier than the last, a physical manifestation of the emotional turmoil churning inside me. The air, once fresh and invigorating, now felt thick with the scent of betrayal. Approaching the service counter inside, I met the eyes of the attendant, a young woman with a look of concern that mirrored the confusion and hurt I felt. "Can I help you?" she asked, her voice a lifeline in the sea of my despair. "I need a taxi," I managed to say, my voice steadier than I felt. "A long ride back home." As she nodded, typing into her computer, I couldn't help but reflect on the irony of my situation. Here I was, seeking help from a stranger, when those I called family had turned their backs on me without a second thought. The taxi arrived with a quiet hum, its arrival a stark reminder of the journey ahead, not just the ride home, but the long road to healing and understanding. How had things gone so wrong? Was it my blindness to Nathan and his parents' true nature, or had their masks been too well crafted? The questions swirled in my mind as the taxi pulled away, the rest stop fading into the distance, a painful yet necessary goodbye to a chapter of my life I thought I knew. But as the miles stretched out before me, a resolve began to take shape within the chaos of my thoughts. This journey, though born of cruelty, would not define me. I would find my way back, not just to my home, but to myself. The road ahead was uncertain, filled with challenges and revelations, but I was ready. Ready to face the truth, ready to rebuild, ready to fight back against those who thought they could discard me so easily. This was not the end of my story, but a cruel departure that marked the beginning of a new chapter, one where I would emerge stronger, wiser, and more resilient than ever before. The hum of the taxi's engine was the only sound that filled the void of silence as the city's skyline slowly came into view. My mind, however, was anything but silent. It raced back and forth, replaying the events that led up to my unceremonious abandonment. With each passing mile, the memories of my life with Nathan and his parents started to unravel, revealing the subtle manipulations I had overlooked. "Are you okay, miss?" The taxi driver's voice cut through my thoughts, his eyes meeting mine in the rearview mirror. "Just reflecting," I replied, forcing a smile. His concern was a stark contrast to the cold dismissal I'd received from my own family. As we continued the journey, my mind shifted to the days leading up to the camping trip. Nathan had been enthusiastic, painting it as the perfect opportunity for all of us to bond, especially with his parents. Marcia and Elliot had echoed his sentiments, their smiles wide and welcoming. Yet, beneath their eager anticipation, there had been an undercurrent of control, dictating not just the destination, but every aspect of the trip. "Kira, dear, we thought it'd be best if we handled the itinerary," Marcia had said, her voice laced with a sweetness that now felt like venom. "You just relax and enjoy the trip." I had nodded, grateful then for their involvement. But as the city lights grew brighter, so did the realization of their deceit. Their kindness had been a facade, a way to keep me complacent while they plotted their cruel finale. The taxi pulled up to my home, the familiar facade now a reminder of the isolation that awaited me. I paid the driver and stepped out, the weight of my solitude pressing down as I approached the door. Inside, the silence was deafening. The walls echoed with the laughter and conversations that had once filled the space, now replaced by the stark reality of my situation. I was alone, cast aside by the people I had called family. But it was the sight of the camping gear, carelessly left in the corner of the living room, that ignited a spark of anger within me. How dare they parade their familial bonds, only to discard me when I was no longer of use? The phone rang, piercing the silence. I hesitated before answering, my heart racing. "Kira," Nathan's voice came through, cold and distant. "I see you made it back." The audacity of his call after everything fueled my growing resolve. "Why, Nathan?" I asked, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "Why do this?" There was a pause, and then, "You just don't fit into our family, Kira. It's better this way." His words meant to wound, instead served as a clarion call. I was done being the victim, done being manipulated and discarded. "You'll regret this, Nathan. I promise you that," I said, the line going dead as I hung up. The finality of the moment was not lost on me. This was the end of one chapter and the beginning of another, a chapter where I would no longer be the pawn in their twisted game. The next morning, I woke with a newfound clarity. The pain of betrayal still lingered, but it was overshadowed by a determination to expose and dismantle the facade that Nathan and his parents had so carefully constructed. They had underestimated me, believing they could control and discard me at their whim. But I would no longer be the silent sufferer of their manipulations. It was time for them to face the consequences of their actions. My revenge would be meticulous, served with the same cold calculation they had used against me. Nathan and his parents would come to realize the true cost of their betrayal, not through petty acts of vengeance, but through a calculated unveiling of their true natures. As I began to plan my next steps, I knew the road ahead would be challenging. But I was ready to fight back, ready to reclaim my life, and ready to show them that I was not the weak link they had presumed me to be. This was not just a battle for justice. It was a fight for my dignity and self-worth, and I was determined to win. The days following my return home were eerily quiet, the kind of silence that speaks louder than any words could. I busied myself with tasks, anything to keep my mind from dwelling on the betrayal. But the illusion of normalcy shattered the moment Nathan and his parents returned. I heard the car before I saw it, the familiar rumble of the engine a harbinger of the confrontation to come. My heart raced, not with fear, but with a steely resolve. As they entered, the air thickened, charged with unspoken tensions and the weight of impending revelations. Nathan was the first to speak, his voice devoid of any warmth. "Kira, we need to talk about your behavior. It's unacceptable." I stared at him, incredulous. "My behavior? After what you did?" Marcia stepped forward, her tone patronizing. "Dear, we're doing this for your own good. You've been out of line. We're here to help you get back on track." The audacity of their words was staggering. They stood in my home, speaking as if they were the aggrieved parties, as if their deceit and manipulation were acts of benevolence. It was Elliot who laid bare their intentions. "We've decided it's best if we move in for a while, to ensure things run smoothly." I felt a cold laugh escape me. "Move in? You think after everything I'd just welcome you with open arms?" Nathan's response was swift, a calculated attempt to assert control. "It's already decided, Kira. This is happening whether you like it or not." Their words, their actions, were like pieces of a puzzle falling into place, revealing the extent of their control and disregard for me. But as they stood there expecting submission, they failed to see the change within me. The fear they once instilled was now replaced by a burning desire for retribution. "You can't control me anymore," I said, my voice steady and strong. "You think you can just walk over me, but you're wrong." Nathan scoffed, his arrogance unmasked. "And what will you do, Kira? You're alone in this." They underestimated me, a mistake I intended to use to my advantage. As they made themselves at home, their presence a constant reminder of their betrayal, I began to plot my course. They sought to correct my behavior, but it was they who would learn a harsh lesson. In the days that followed, their attempts to dominate every aspect of my life became more brazen. Mealtimes, household decisions, even my personal space, nothing was sacred. But with each overstep, my resolve hardened. I observed, I planned, and most importantly, I reached out to the one person I knew I could trust, my father, Douglas. Douglas had always been my rock, a steady presence in the tumult of my life. When I told him of Nathan's and his parents' actions, his response was immediate and unwavering. "We'll handle this, Kira," he assured me, his voice a beacon of support. "They won't know what hit them." Together, we began to devise a plan. It was a plan born of necessity, a way to turn the tables on Nathan and his parents. They believed they were teaching me a lesson, but it was they who would be schooled in the end. Our conversations were cautious, our plans meticulous. Every detail was considered, every potential outcome weighed. And as the plan took shape, so too did my confidence. Nathan and his parents had sought to break me, to mold me into their vision of compliance. But in their arrogance, they had only succeeded in forging their own downfall. The final piece fell into place with an invitation, a simple gesture that masked the storm on the horizon. "We're going on another camping trip," I announced one evening, my voice calm and even. The surprise on their faces was palpable, their curiosity piqued. They saw it as an opportunity, a sign of my capitulation. Little did they know, it was the beginning of their end. As they accepted the invitation, their smiles wide with triumph, I couldn't help but smile too. For I knew that this trip would be unlike any other. This time, they were the ones being led into the wilderness, and I held the map. The days leading up to the camping trip were filled with an undercurrent of tension, a silent storm brewing beneath the surface of every interaction. Nathan and his parents, smug in their perceived victory, took to the preparations with a zeal that bordered on glee. They believed they had me cornered, subdued into compliance. But with each passing day, my resolve only grew stronger, fueled by the knowledge of the impending reckoning. "Douglas will be joining us," I announced casually over dinner, a statement that elicited raised eyebrows and poorly concealed disdain. "Your father?" Marcia asked, her tone dripping with skepticism. "Well, I suppose that could be pleasant." The forced smile on her face did little to mask her true feelings. They viewed Douglas as an outsider, an unwelcome variable in their carefully constructed domain of control. Little did they know, he was the linchpin in our plan, a silent ally biding his time. As the day of departure drew closer, the facade of familial unity began to crack. Nathan and his parents, emboldened by their perceived upper hand, made no effort to hide their contempt. "We're doing you a favor, Kira. Remember that," Nathan said one evening, his words a thinly veiled threat. "This trip is your chance to make amends, to prove you can be a part of this family." His words, meant to intimidate, only served to strengthen my determination. They still believed they were in control, that they could dictate my place within their twisted vision of family. But the storm was coming, and with it, a revelation of their own vulnerability. Douglas arrived the night before we were set to leave, his presence a calming force amidst the chaos. His arrival was met with forced pleasantries, the tension palpable as Nathan and his parents attempted to maintain their charade of welcoming hosts. "We appreciate you coming, Douglas," Elliot managed to say, his smile as insincere as his gratitude. "The pleasure's all mine," Douglas replied, his voice steady and unwavering. His eyes met mine, a silent reassurance of the strength we drew from one another. The morning of our departure dawned bright and early, the sun a stark contrast to the storm brewing within the confines of our small convoy. As we set out, the atmosphere was one of strained anticipation, Nathan and his parents oblivious to the true nature of the journey upon which they were embarking. The ride was filled with idle chatter, Marcia and Elliot making a show of their enthusiasm for the trip. Nathan, for his part, remained aloof, his occasional glances in my direction a reminder of the power struggle that lay beneath the surface. "We should make good time," Nathan announced, his voice cutting through the hum of the engine. "Kira's planned the route, haven't you?" I nodded, my response measured. "Yes, everything's been taken care of." Their laughter filled the car, a mocking acknowledgement of my role as the orchestrator of this trip. Unbeknownst to them, it was indeed all according to plan, but not the plan they imagined. As the miles passed, the landscape began to shift, the familiar giving way to the remote and untamed. With each turn, we moved further from the world they knew, closer to the reckoning that awaited. The final stretch of the journey was met with silence, the realization of our isolation dawning upon Nathan and his parents. As we arrived at the campsite, the true scope of our isolation became apparent. The vast wilderness, a stark reminder of their vulnerability. "Here we are," I said, breaking the silence. "Our home for the next few days." The look on their faces as they surveyed the remote campsite was one of dawning realization, the first hints of unease creeping into their previously confident demeanors. As we set up camp, Douglas and I exchanged a glance, a silent acknowledgement of the phase to come. The stage was set, the players in place. It was time for the storm to break, for Nathan and his parents to face the consequences of their actions. The deceptive invitation had been accepted, and now the trap was set. The brewing storm was about to be unleashed, and with it, their downfall. The first night under the canvas of stars and the vast wilderness was quiet, an eerie prelude to the storm that was about to descend upon Nathan and his parents. They settled into the campsite with an air of forced joviality, still unaware of the impending turn of events. I watched them, their laughter and idle chatter grating against the serene backdrop of nature, a stark reminder of the facade they had maintained for so long. "Kira, this is quite the spot you've chosen," Marcia commented, her voice laced with a hint of unease as she glanced around the secluded campsite. "Yes, it's perfect for what we need," I replied, my words carrying a weight that only Douglas and I understood. As the evening progressed, the initial ease began to give way to the discomfort of the wilderness. The luxuries they were accustomed to were absent here in the remote isolation of nature. Their veneer of civility started to crack as the reality of their situation set in. Nathan approached me, a hint of frustration in his voice. "Kira, where's the generator? We need power for the night." I met his gaze, steady and unyielding. "There is no generator, Nathan. We're going to experience camping as it should be, away from the comforts of home." His frustration turned to anger, a glimpse of the man who had left me stranded without a second thought. "This is ridiculous. You expect us to live like savages?" The confrontation drew Marcia and Elliot's attention, their displeasure at the situation evident. "Kira, dear, we assumed you'd have prepared better. This is hardly what we expected," Marcia chided, her tone dripping with condescension. The tension around the campfire that night was palpable, the crackling of the flames a stark contrast to the coldness between us. Douglas's presence was a silent support, his watchful eyes a reminder that we were not alone in this. As the days passed, the challenges of survival began to wear on them. The absence of their usual comforts, the reliance on basic skills for meals, and the exposure to the elements highlighted their incompetence and reliance on the facade of control they had so carefully curated. "I can't believe you thought this would be enjoyable," Elliot complained, his voice echoing the growing sentiment of regret. "This was supposed to bring us together, not tear us apart," Nathan added, his words an ironic echo of the pain they had inflicted upon me. Their complaints were met with silence from Douglas and me. Our plan was unfolding, the layers of their arrogance and control being stripped away by the harsh reality of their surroundings. It was on the third day that the true nature of our journey began to dawn on them. As they struggled with the basic tasks necessary for survival, their veneer of superiority crumbled, revealing the vulnerability and fear they had masked with their contempt and manipulation. "You planned this, didn't you?" Nathan accused, his eyes burning with the realization of his predicament. I met his accusation with a calm resolve. "I planned a camping trip, Nathan. It's not my fault you were unprepared for reality." The revelation of their predicament was the turning point. Stripped of their control and exposed to the rawness of nature, Nathan and his parents were forced to confront their own inadequacies. The dynamics of power shifted, the illusions they had maintained crumbling under the weight of their situation. As the trip neared its end, the facade of unity they had tried to impose was shattered. The wilderness had been an unforgiving teacher, exposing the true nature of their characters and their relationships. The planning of the revenge trip, executed under the guise of a family bonding experience, had served its purpose. Nathan and his parents, once blinded by their ego, were now faced with the stark reality of their actions and their consequences. The journey had been a careful orchestration of events, my emotions hidden behind a facade of compliance, leading to a climax that would forever change the dynamics of our relationship. The second journey had not only been a physical one, but a journey into the depths of their character, exposing the fragility of their constructed superiority. As we packed to leave, the silence that enveloped us was a testament to the unspoken truths that had been revealed. The storm had passed, leaving behind a landscape forever altered, and a path forward that was uncertain but inevitable. As dawn broke on the final day of our camping trip, the air was thick with an unspoken understanding. The wilderness, with its unforgiving landscape and raw beauty, had served as the backdrop for a dramatic unraveling of pretenses. Nathan, Marcia, and Elliot were visibly changed, their usual air of superiority replaced by a weariness that spoke volumes. After a silent breakfast, I stood, facing them with a calmness that belied the storm that had passed, and the one still to come. "I hope you've learned something from this trip," I said, my voice steady and clear. Nathan scoffed, a hint of his old defiance flickering. "What's that, Kira? That you can be as cruel as us?" "No," I replied, locking eyes with him. "That actions have consequences, that you can't treat people like they're disposable." Marcia interjected, her tone sharp. "And you think you've taught us a lesson, dear? By playing the survivalist?" I smiled, not out of amusement, but with the resolve of someone who had seen their plan through to the end. Not just a lesson about survival, but about respect, about family. It was then that Douglas stepped forward, his presence a silent support. "It's time we head back," he announced, signaling the beginning of the end of our orchestrated ordeal. The drive back was markedly different from our journey out. The conversation was minimal, the air filled with reflections on the lessons learned and the revelations uncovered. As we neared civilization, the reality of their situation began to dawn on Nathan and his parents. Their manipulation and cruelty had led them here, to a place of humility and consequence. Upon our return, the facade of normalcy that they had so carefully constructed was irrevocably shattered. Nathan and his parents were left to grapple with the weight of their actions, the understanding that their attempt to control and demean had backfired, leaving them exposed and vulnerable. In the days that followed, the cold reception at home was a stark contrast to the forced unity of the trip. The house, once a symbol of their familial dominance, now stood as a reminder of their fragility and my resolve. "You thought you could break me," I confronted Nathan. "Our first real conversation since our return. But you only showed me what I'm capable of, what I won't tolerate." Nathan's reply was a mixture of frustration and realization. "You've made your point, Kira. What now? You want a divorce?" "It's not just about what I want," I said, my tone firm. "It's about what's right. You and your parents can't treat people like this. There has to be change." The conversation marked a turning point, not just for our relationship, but for the dynamic within the family. Nathan's unilateral decisions, once made with the backing of his parents, were now questioned, their validity and morality scrutinized. In the weeks that followed, the cold reception evolved into a silent acknowledgement of the need for change. The revelation of Nathan's plan to move his parents into our home without my consent became a focal point of our discussions, a symbol of the disregard for my autonomy and the need for respect and mutual decision-making within our marriage. The ordeal had not only exposed the manipulative nature of Nathan and his parents, but had also ignited a spark of defiance and strength within me. I began to see the full extent of their control and disrespect, and with that realization came a determination to stand up for myself, to demand the respect and autonomy that I deserved. As the chapter of our lives marked by manipulation and control came to a close, a new chapter began, one where the dynamics of power were realigned, where respect and autonomy were not just demanded but given, and where the lessons learned in the wilderness served as the foundation for a new beginning, one built on mutual respect, understanding, and the acknowledgement that no one should ever be treated as disposable. The aftermath of our return from the wilderness marked a profound shift in the dynamics within our home. The stark lessons learned in isolation began to seep into the fabric of our daily lives, challenging the established norms and forcing a confrontation with the harsh realities of our relationships. Nathan, Marcia, and Elliot found themselves grappling with a newfound vulnerability. The arrogance that had once shielded them was now replaced with an uneasy recognition of their dependence on the very person they had sought to undermine. This change was not welcomed. It was endured, a bitter pill that tasted of their own making. "I never realized how much we relied on you, Kira," Nathan admitted one evening, the silence of our home amplifying the weight of his words. "I thought we were teaching you a lesson, but it seems the lesson was ours to learn." His admission was a victory, albeit a hollow one. The damage inflicted, the wounds carved by words and actions, could not be easily healed by acknowledgement alone. Yet it was a start, a fragile step towards a semblance of understanding. But the journey from realization to action is fraught with obstacles, and old habits die hard. Marcia and Elliot struggled with their own demons. Their attempts to adapt to this new reality met with internal resistance. "Why should we change? We've always done things this way," Marcia protested during a particularly tense dinner. Her words, a testament to the depth of their denial, hung in the air, a reminder of the chasm that still lay between us. "It's not about what we've always done," I countered, my patience wearing thin. "It's about what's right, about respect and decency." The concept seemed foreign to them, an ideal so far removed from their worldview that it appeared almost unattainable. Yet the alternative, a return to the isolation and helplessness experienced in the wilderness, served as a powerful deterrent, a reminder of the consequences of their actions. As days turned into weeks, the struggle for change became a central theme of our lives. Nathan, caught between his loyalty to his parents and his realization of their toxic behavior, found himself at a crossroads. "I don't want to live like this anymore," he confessed, the strain evident in his voice. "But I don't know how to break free from this cycle." His vulnerability was a sign of growth, a crack in the facade that had once seemed impenetrable. It was an opportunity, a chance to rebuild on foundations of mutual respect and understanding. "Our past doesn't have to define our future," I told him, my own resolve strengthened by the trials we had faced. "We can choose a different path, one that leads away from manipulation and control." The path was not easy. The process of dismantling years of ingrained behaviors and attitudes was fraught with setbacks and challenges. Yet with each small victory, with every step taken towards mutual respect, the shadow of our past receded, giving way to a tentative hope for a different future. The transformation was not instantaneous. It required effort, patience, and a willingness to confront uncomfortable truths. But as the weeks turned into months, the change became palpable. The cold reception that had once greeted me upon my return from the wilderness was replaced with a cautious warmth, a recognition of the strength and resilience that had emerged from the depths of betrayal and hardship. In this new reality, Nathan, Marcia, and Elliot were forced to confront the consequences of their actions, not through punishment or revenge, but through the hard work of self-reflection and change. It was a lesson learned not in the comfort of their home, but in the harshness of the wilderness, a lesson that would shape the course of our lives forever. The dust had settled on the tumultuous events that had reshaped our lives. The journey from betrayal to a fragile understanding had been fraught with challenges, but as the dawn of a new beginning rose, so too did the realization that the fabric of our family had been irrevocably altered. The legal repercussions of Nathan's and his parents' actions, though not the focus of our journey, served as a stark reminder of the consequences of their behavior. The issues of illegal dumping and trespassing, which had come to light in the aftermath of our wilderness ordeal, were now matters for the courts to decide. Douglas, ever the stalwart ally, led the charge, ensuring that justice, in whatever form it might take, would be served. "It's not about vengeance," Douglas explained one afternoon as we discussed the legal proceedings. "It's about accountability. They need to understand the impact of their actions, not just on you, but on the environment, on the community." His words resonated with me, a reflection of the journey I had undertaken. The pursuit of revenge had given way to a deeper understanding of justice and the importance of standing up for what is right, not just for personal satisfaction, but for the greater good. The divorce proceedings initiated in the wake of our return were surprisingly straightforward. Nathan, perhaps humbled by the events and the realization of his actions, offered no resistance. The settlement, though not my primary concern, was generous, a testament to his understanding of the harm he had caused and his willingness to make amends. As I stood in the courtroom, the final decree in hand, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. It was not a feeling of triumph, but of liberation, a release from the chains of manipulation and control that had bound me. "I'm proud of you, Kira," Douglas said, his voice filled with emotion. "You've shown incredible strength and grace through all of this." His words, a balm to the wounds of the past, filled me with a sense of peace. I had emerged from the darkness, not unscathed, but stronger and more resilient. The aftermath of our ordeal saw a transformation, not just in my relationship with Nathan and his parents, but in myself. I had discovered a strength I did not know I possessed, a will to fight for my dignity and autonomy. In the weeks that followed, as Nathan and his parents faced the legal and personal consequences of their actions, a sense of closure enveloped me. The house, once a battleground of wills, was now a sanctuary, a place where I could begin to rebuild my life. The final chapter of this tumultuous journey was written not in the courtroom or the wilderness, but in the quiet moments of reflection and the decisions that shaped my path forward. I chose to embrace the lessons learned, to move forward with an open heart and a clear vision of the future. As I planned a genuine camping trip with Douglas, a symbol of my rebirth and newfound independence, I realized that this was not just an escape into the wilderness, but a celebration of survival, of the journey from darkness into light. The trip, unmarred by the specter of manipulation and control, was a testament to the power of resilience, a reminder that even in the face of betrayal and hardship, it is possible to emerge stronger, to find peace and purpose in the aftermath. As Douglas and I set out, the open road before us, I felt a sense of freedom, a liberation from the past. The future was uncertain, filled with challenges and opportunities, but I was ready to face whatever came my way, secure in the knowledge that I had weathered the storm and emerged not just as a survivor, but as a victor in the truest sense of the word.